Yo, what's up guys? In this video, we're going to talk to you about standing up for yourself and the proper way to stand up for yourself, as I define it, and also how to learn how to stand up for yourself if you're one of these people that has trouble standing up for yourself. So, a little bit of background, I used to be really bad at standing up for myself. I was the type of person where if there was some sort of violation, social violation, let's call it, I wouldn't say anything. I was very afraid of confrontation and I would just sit there and be quiet and not say anything. This was most of my life. And in my mind, I'm sure some of you can relate to this, the reason that we do this is because we anticipate the confrontation to be worse than sitting there quietly and not saying anything, which I would argue is completely wrong. There's nothing worse, in my opinion, than that feeling that you get when you feel like there's been some sort of violation and you don't say anything about it. You don't fight back at all. This is why bullying happens. Bullying happens because kids don't stick up for themselves. That's really what it is. A bully will not pick on a kid who stands up for themselves. So if you are in a situation, right, hopefully you're not in a situation where you're getting picked on or violated constantly. But if you are, the first thing that you have to know is that you have to fight back, right? I'm not saying you need to be violent or anything like that, but you need to, there needs to be some sort of counterattack, let's call it, right? Somebody picks on you, somebody says something to you, somebody does some sort of social violation, you have to respond in some way. Okay, you don't have to be as witty as them, you don't have to be as cool as them, but you have to bite back a little bit. Okay, you have to at least do something or say something. Just try and be funny, try and joke them down. I wouldn't, you don't want to lose your temper, and because then you lose, right? In general, like losing your temper in a social situation is a sign of low value, even if it's a really bad social violation. Although I guess if it's really bad, maybe you can lose your temper, but don't. Generally, bad idea, don't do it. The best thing to do is to joke the other person down, is to come up with some sort of witty comeback. But what you have to do is you have to answer them in some way. You can't just be quiet. You can't just be like, haha, yeah, I guess you're right. No, you have to fight back in some way. Now, the second thing that I think is very important is that you have to do it immediately. Okay, when you stand up for yourself, as soon as you get that feeling, and this is something that you'll develop over time, as soon as you get that feeling where you're like, so what happens? You think to yourself, wait a minute, that wasn't right. I've been wronged. What do I do? Do I be quiet and not say anything? Or am I going to cause a confrontation and stand up for myself? As soon as you come to that crossroads, and it's going to happen in the moment, you're going to have to think on the spot, you're going to have to choose the confrontation. This, in my opinion, is the best way to learn to stand up for yourself, because in any situation where you have to respond under pressure, the only way that you are going to learn to respond under pressure is by putting yourself in the fire, putting yourself in the situation where you are under pressure and choosing the correct action. A lot of the times what happens, right? We've all been in a situation where maybe we get clowned in some sort of social interaction, and we go home and we think of a great comeback 4 days later in the shower or something, right? To this day, I don't know if anybody else does this, but I always think of situations in my past where I got clowned or there was some sort of violation, and it makes me I get this really awful feeling, shit, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I say that? Whatever, can't turn back the clock. But the point is that you have to put the person in their place immediately, right? You have to at least fight back, or you have to at least call attention to the violation immediately. And that's really the best way to do it, is that when somebody commits some sort of act socially that is inappropriate, even if other people are laughing, the best way to handle it, if you can't think of a clever, witty comeback, is you call them out on the spot for exactly what they're doing. For example, let's say somebody's clowning you in front of a group of people to make themselves look cool, right? Or to pick on you for some reason. So you could say, why did you do that, man? What, are you just trying to make fun of me to look cool in front of your friends? If that is actually why they did it, you will immediately put them in their place. They'll be on their back foot and they'll be like, no, oh, I didn't say that, man. No, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry, I didn't know. If they still try to keep clowning you, if they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, you're so sensitive, That's another violation, right? And you do the same thing. You call that violation out in front of other people. Oh, what? Now you're saying sorry, like you think you hurt my feelings. Now you're trying to clown me even more in front of these people. What do you have to prove? Why are you acting like that? Do you have some sort of problem with me? Did I do something to you? If you did, let me know, because I don't understand why you're being like this, right? That's the power of the truth, right? The power of stating the truth in literal terms with your actual words in the moment, which is not easy to do for most people, but like anything else, it's a skill that can be cultivated. And the best way to do this, if you don't want to work, if you're not a naturally funny person, or you're not naturally like quick on the draw with good comebacks, the best thing to do, there's I forget what philosopher it was, but they said that the truth is its own defense, right? If you are in a situation and you know you're right, or you believe you're right, then if you state the truth, and if you state it in literal terms, that is generally thought to be a sufficient defense of whatever it is that you're doing. But you have to make sure you can't use metaphors, you can't use analogies, like this bully example that we're using. Why are you doing that, man? You're acting like a total jerk, right? That's a metaphor, or is it an analogy? I think it's a metaphor, right? You're acting like a jerk. You know what I mean? You have to call it out for exactly what it is, as specifically as you can. If that makes sense. I know it's a little bit nerdy in terms of like, oh, well, why do I have to say this word instead of that word? But you have to understand that the specific words that you use will have a particular effect on the person or people that you're speaking to. And again, in my experience, metaphors do have their place, but you need to use them strategically to create images in people's mind, and those images will create certain feelings in their mind. But as a good fallback plan, if you don't have any metaphors prepared ahead of time, the best fallback plan is to use direct, literal language. Number one, to make sure that you're not misunderstood. And number two, to make sure that people can't twist your words against you, right? I remember a conversation that I was in recently with somebody, and we're talking about doctors, and I don't know, a mutual friend of ours was going to a doctor, and the doctor prescribed some sort of medication. And I said something like, well, we should research this medication to make sure there's no side effects, because doctors don't always prescribe medication that's best for the patient. They're bound by certain rules, which will cause them to prescribe medication that may have a lot of unwanted side effects. And this person who I guess I was arguing with said to me, oh, so what? You think all doctors don't care about their patients and they just prescribe whatever they want? Well, no, that's actually not what I said. What I said was, and then I just repeated exactly what I said, because what I originally said was as literal as it gets, right? It does not get more literal than that. You guys know what literal means, right? Like, this is literally a pair of sunglasses, This is literally a nickel, This is not like a symbol of capitalism or something like that. This is a nickel. This is a coin. You know what I mean? Anyway, give it a try, work it out. Like I've said in other videos, the solution to many of our problems as human beings, I believe, is to use correct language. You have to describe things in a literal sense. Another example, right? Let's say you're overweight. Let's say you're fat, you're obese, you're 50 pounds overweight. If you say to yourself, I'm such a lazy piece of shit, I'm a worthless human being, I can never lose the weight, right? Those are not literal descriptions of your condition. Your condition, if we were to describe it in literal terms, let's say you want to lose, your goal weight is 50 pounds less, you would say, I'm currently 50 pounds above my goal weight. And the techniques or strategies that I've tried in the past, and then you list them, like yo-yo dieting, being vegan, whatever, those have not worked. I have not maintained, this 50-pound weight loss in the long term. And I'm frustrated at my lack of results, right? That is a literal description of what your problem is. But where we get in trouble is we let our emotions get the better of us, and that causes us to use disempowering language, I guess is the best way to put it. It causes us to use language that makes the problem worse than it is, right? Because there's no solution to being a piece of shit. You're not actually a piece of shit. You're not fecal matter. You are not, right? You're not. But when you say I'm a piece of shit, or I'm a lazy piece of shit, or I'm a worthless human being, those statements, I guess, those descriptions, they do not have a solution, right? Whereas the literal description always has a solution. That's really the power of it. if you are 50 pounds overweight, what's the solution? The solution is to find a system or a method to help you lose the weight and keep it off. That's it, right? There's no solution to being a piece of shit. There's no solution to being a worthless human being, right? At least not one that's easily quantifiable without additional thought, which most people are not willing to do, ever, really, is what it is. So, bottom line, I know this video started out about standing up for yourself. The best way to stand up for yourself is to call the violation into place, call it out immediately as it happens, despite the fact that it will cause you to be uncomfortable. This will probably cause you to fight with a lot more people who you don't fight with now if they are stubborn. But over the long term, and even really the short term, when you stand up for yourself, people will respect you more, and they'll learn not, I don't want to say they'll learn not to mess with you, but they will think twice before they attack you. Whereas if you don't stand up for yourself, and people know that they can get away with saying anything to you, even if it's not true, even if it's out of line, even if it's rude, even if they're technically wrong, but they know that they can get away with saying it because you're not going to do anything about it anyway, they're going to walk all over you. Even nice people will do this, okay? So don't think that because somebody's nice or kind or has a good reputation that they won't do this as well. Right? Any small violation, even the small ones, right? You may think that it's like something small happens and you're like, oh, well, I don't want to be unreasonable, so I guess I'll just let this one slide. What ends up happening is that they get bigger and bigger as a result. Until quiet people, what always happens, what's the classic result, is that, they take it and take it and take it, and then one day they just lose their mind and they blow up and it's like this big screaming fight. And, then the other person finally starts respecting them a little bit. But of course, after a little bit of time, they start testing again and picking at the person again and again and again. And then, they probably blow up again. Except this time it's even worse because they have recently let their anger out. So the time before they let their anger out again is probably going to be much longer because they've conditioned themselves, right? If we want to make a metaphor, this is like a muscle, right? You're taking shit from people muscle. You're strengthening that, right? And that's not a muscle that you want to strengthen. That's not, you do not want that muscle to be strong. You don't. That's a bad habit to have that, taking shit from people muscle. Why would you want to have that in your life? Are you a doormat? Are you like a rag that we clean the floor with? No, you're not. You're a human being, and you should believe that you have a right to basic human respect and to not be walked all over by anybody, regardless of what that person's done for you or who they are in your family or your friend group or society. Got to stand up for yourself. Anyway, thought I'd make this video. Hopefully it was useful for you. Tell me though, what is a situation where you have been in, where you have stood up for yourself and it worked out good? And you were scared about doing it, but in the end it all worked out. Let me know, leave me a comment, go check out my blog, link in the description. Set yourself up for success. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, peace.